Hey guys, it's Ray here and welcome back to another Clash Royale video. Now, taking a look at the challenges tab, the very next global tournament starting in just a few days is actually a triple draft global tournament. Personally, I think this is going to be an absolutely amazing global tournament. No more stupid earthquake meta, no more worrying about your cards not being level 9. Instead, you're going to be making your own deck based off of a predefined card pool. Triple draft is a game mode that I honestly have not played in a very long time, but it's definitely one of the game modes that I enjoy a lot more in this current game. Of course, behind Infinite Elixir, which, I made. Anyways, today I'm going to be going over 5 tips to absolutely dominate this upcoming triple elixir mode, because when it comes to actually crafting your decks in every single triple elixir match, there definitely are a couple of tips and strategies in order to ensure that you have the best deck possible going into the actual match. Anyways guys, before we get into the video, if you could please leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this one. Also, feel free to use code RAY in the shop. Any support would be greatly appreciated. And with all that out of the way, let's get right into the tips. Number 1, recognizing the draft tables. So when it comes to triple draft, the cards that you're able to choose from are actually a lot more predictable than you might actually think. This is because the triple draft game mode has a set of 10 different draft tables. When it comes to building your deck, 8 of the 10 draft tables will actually be utilized, 5 of which are guaranteed. To be a little bit more specific, you're guaranteed a win condition card, a small spell card, a big spell card, an anti-air card, as well as a secondary anti-air card. Now, that makes up 5 of the 8 cards in your deck. Of the remaining 3 spaces, 3 of the following categories are going to be chosen: tank support, anti-tank, splash, mini tanks, and distractions. Now, as a quick disclaimer, this is not a fully updated list with all of the new cards. This is the list as of 1 year ago, so the newer cards such as Electric Spirit or Mother Witch are not going to be in this list, but they still might appear in the challenge. Another important thing to know is that you actually share a pool of cards with your opponent. Let's say you're picking among 3 different win conditions, then you know for a fact that your opponent will not even have a choice of picking any of those 3. They're going to be given a choice between 3 different win conditions, so you can obviously take that into account when you're trying to build your own deck. Having this basic knowledge of how the draft actually works is going to be very useful for you to actually take advantage of in order to ensure that you can make the best possible deck for your specific match. Number 2, analyzing the opponent's choices. Now, another very interesting element that comes with the triple draft is that you can see which 3 cards your opponents get to choose from. This is again very useful when it comes to building your own deck, because you're not only trying to build a very well balanced deck, but you're trying to make one that has a favorable matchup against the opponent. Therefore, when you're picking a couple of your cards, especially the win condition as well as the big spell, you have to really pay attention to which options your opponents have to choose from, because the win condition and the big spell are going to be the 2 main ways that your opponents are going to be trying to connect to your tower. Therefore, when you're picking the rest of your 6 cards, you're going to keep that in mind and make sure that you have an answer for their win condition as well as their big spell. For example, if your opponent has a choice between the giant, the golem, and the electro giant as their win condition, then of course you're going to want to pick every single possible tank killer you can see to try and shred the beatdown pushes that your opponents are going to be trying to build. On the contrary, if they have the choice between some smaller win conditions such as the Royal Hogs or the Mortar, you're going to be wanting to pick heavy splash units such as the Bowler or the Executioner that are going to be very effective at dealing with these kinds of win conditions. While obviously it's more ideal to be able to keep track of every single card your opponent could possibly pick, obviously that requires a bit too much brain power, so for us normal people, I do believe that keeping track of these 2 choices is going to be extremely valuable in making your own deck. Number 3, watch out for the elixir cost. Now, another important note when building your decks in triple elixir is you have to be very careful to ensure that your deck is not going to be overly expensive or overly cheap. This is something that I find that a lot of players, including me, will fall for when I'm picking those triple draft cards. I see these super effective cards, these Sparkies, these Bowlers, these Lightnings, these Golems, and I just want to pick all of them to try and steamroll my opponents. But oftentimes, you're just gonna end up with a deck that is just so expensive that it's completely unviable and will not function because you're just so short on elixir all of the time. On the contrary, picking a deck that's too cheap will leave you very weak to big beatdown pushes if you're unable to pressure the opponent properly. To counteract this, there are a couple of pointers that I have in this department. The first is to watch that average elixir cost in the bottom deck area of your draft. That will tell you the current average elixir cost of the deck, which can give you a quick overview of whether or not you need to be picking heavier cards or to be picking the cheaper options to help you cycle your deck. Ideally, I would recommend that you keep this average elixir cost between 3.5 and 4.0, but you can go a little bit under or a little bit over if the specific situation does call for it. This is because a 3.5 average elixir cost is going to be a good balance between cycle potential with the cheap cards as well as power output with the more expensive options. In addition, this is the ideal elixir range for any control type deck, which is one of the more safe archetypes that you can pick, as I will go over in the very next tip. Number 4, know your synergies. Now, of course, this is very obvious, but it's something that I think I should definitely cover because it's one of the most important things when you're building any deck for the matter. Knowing your synergies as well as knowing your archetypes is going to be very important to pick a deck that works together well in order to take down your opponents. One approach to this is to, of course, pick cards that synergize well together. By knowing the most common card synergies, you can be much more prepared for whatever your opponents have because you know that in the current meta, these synergies have been tested and you know that they'll work effectively. For example, if you have the choice to pick a Splasher and then you have the choice to pick a Tornado, you're almost always going to pick the Tornado because you know that in the upcoming match, Splash and the Nado will give you a lot of versatility in terms of defense as well as offense. In addition, it's also very important to decide what type of deck that you're going to be building. Are you going to be building a cycle deck or a control deck or a beatdown deck? Of course, this depends on what win conditions that you're going to be given. This is why triple draft can be a little bit more difficult if you're not as versatile of a player, because oftentimes you're not going to be getting an archetype that you're going to be the most familiar with. However, it is going to be very useful to know which archetype you are trying to achieve, because that can oftentimes change what kind of cards you're going to want to pick. For example, if you're trying to achieve a cheap cycle deck, you're going to need to pick low elixir cost cards that can apply high and quick pressure towards your opponent's tower. As another example, if you're trying to build a beatdown deck, then you're going to want to be picking cards with high power, high counter push potential that can just completely steamroll your opponents if they're not careful. Number 5, playing the actual game. Now, when it comes to playing your actual draft game, once you have built your deck, there are definitely a couple of factors that are different from just a normal classic 1v1 match. First off, you know that their deck is most likely going to not be a complete meta copy. While the concepts may be there, they're going to have weird cards subbed in here and there, and it's not going to completely resemble a meta deck. Therefore, when you're approaching these matchups, I would highly recommend that you approach with a very controlled perspective. This means that before you identify what your opponents are using, you're going to be playing much more reactively, seeing what your opponents play first and then reacting to that play with your own cards. This is the safest way to approach any matchup where you have absolutely no idea what they could be running, because it allows you to adapt to almost any matchup without having to worry about, playing a golem in the back first play and then just getting rushed with Elite Barb's Rage in the opposite lane. So there we go, those are my top 5 tips of how exactly I would play my triple draft matches. I hope you guys do enjoy this video, and hopefully you guys took something away from it to use in this upcoming triple draft global tournament. Unfortunately guys, that's all I've got time for in today's episode. Huge thanks to all of my channel members, you guys are the absolute G's. If you enjoyed, please leave a like down below as well as a subscription to my channel, and as always, this is Legendaray, and I'm signing off. See you guys next time.